Akadosh Boker Or Bekiim Bahalacha 2, day 19, page 68. Okay, the passages of this is Halacha Samech. The passages of the Ketoret are followed by Abaye Hava Omer, and then the prayer of Ana V'choach. Yeah, he says the purpose of reciting Abaye, right, is to fulfill our studies in the Halachot of Korbanot, that we're going to be rewarded as if we had participated in offering them to Hashem. Of course, anyone who's capable of studying the meaning of the words, she must do so. So pay attention to what is Abaye v'Misader, right? All those things. Fine. 61. Some people use the version Abaye hu hava misader instead of Abaye misader, since without the word hu, people might run into the syllables one another, and it will sound as if they were saying, pronouncing Hashem's name as Abba, and then Yeha, and then, right? So that's what they say. Abaye hu hava misader. Okay, which is the capital sin. See below in 519 that you're not allowed to mention the name the way that it is spelled, right? The way that it is written. Technically, this is not necessary since no one intends to say the name of Hashem in the prayers. Even so, it is best to pause slightly. So you say Abaye, have a misader, like that. Okay? Yes, that's what you do. That's what you do a pasek. You heard Babahaki pasek. You do Abaye, pause. Have a misader.
Maybe I should start saying the pasek.
Don't have the problem. No. Abaye hava. What did Jesus hear? So therefore you either do Abaye hu hava, but even if you do Abaye hu hava, there's no problem. Or Abaye pasek hava misader. Okay? 56. The Ben Ish Chai stated that some people make sure to say Abaye hu hava misader with the extra word hu, to make sure that the speech will not sound like Abaye, whatever it is, as if they're pronouncing the Hashem's name. The Rishon LeZion ruled that technically this is not necessary since one does not intend to pronounce Hashem's name at all in this passage. He cited the Tosafot, right, to Shavuot, explaining that someone who pronounces the name of Hashem in the way that will receive no share in the world to come. So, en lo chelek le'olam haba, if you mention the name of Hashem the way that it's written, he suggested that this does not apply to someone who pronounces it unintentionally. Therefore, right, it is permissible, right, to use the standard version of Abaye v'Misader. Nevertheless, it is best to pause momentarily between the words Abaye and Hava. This is likewise the ruling of the Tzapichi B'Dvash. While on the subject, it is important to avoid spelling out Hashem's name. Therefore, when reciting the introductory passage of L'Shem Yichud, one must pronounce the letters Yod K Vav K, right, substituting K for Hey, and this was explained above. Meaning a person should never do the Shem Yichud Shem Yichud Shekadeh B'Oziel. Hina Nachum Ben Lekayim. 1 second. Ot Yod. Either you do Ot Yod ve'Ot Hey ve'Ot Vav ve'Ot Hey, because you're doing Ot, or like, right, Ot Yod K Vav K. And if you're not going to do the Ot, you have to do Yod K Vav K, because you cannot say Yod and then the Hey and then the Vav and then the Hey, because if not, you're having a problem. 61 says some people have the version. We just said this. That we just said. The 62, we quoted the Ben Ish Chai. 62, in the passage of Abaye, each item listed is prefaced by the word Kodem. Right? It says Kodem, Kodem Lezeh, Kodem Lezeh, Kodem Lezeh, Kodem Lezeh. After listing Evarim, however, we continue without this word, as the passage appears in our prayer books. The term Kodem is inserted once more at the end of the list. Right? The correct version at the end of this passage includes the word Hashlem, not the word Hashlim. Hashlem, Alea Hashlem, not Hashlim. What? You're not supposed to say Hashlem. You're supposed to say Hashlem. Okay, that's 62. 63, Ana V'choach. After Abaye, we say Ana V'choach. According to the Kabbalah, there's an extremely important part of the Shachrit and must not. Yeah, so he's saying that you should say Hashlem, not Hashlim. That's the way that he's saying. Again, afterwards, Blina, we'll try to. Probably. Okay, following the passage of Abaye, we're going to recite the prayer of Ana B'choach. Again, according to the Kabbalah, it's very, very important, therefore you're not allowed to skip it. This prayer is concluded with Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed, and it should be said silently. The proper way to recite it is to pause momentarily after the word Baruch, and then again after Malchuto, just like we do Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. That's the way that we say it as well. Some people don't know how to say Baruch Shem Kevod Va'ed. So you're supposed to do Baruch Pasek always. Baruch Pasek Shem Kevod Malchuto Pasek Leolam Va'ed. Look in the Siddur. Open it up. A lot of people don't know that. Yeah, and that's how we do it. We do it. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. That's what I just told you.
The second is after
Malchuto. 57. Yeah, Shara Kavanot instructs us to recite the prayer of Ana V'choach after Abaye. This practice is mentioned as well by Seder Yom. The author complained, however, that the prayer of Ribona Olamim should follow the passage of Abaye without interruption, since the prayer includes a request that Hashem should accept it, as if we just said the Korbanot. The author suggested that it would be better to recite Ana V'choach just before Baruch She'amar. He explained in support of the suggestion that the 42 words in this prayer correspond to the 42-letter name of Hashem, the Hashem Membet, right? Which is the composed of the initial letters of the words. Each of the 7 lines represents a name consisting of 6 letters. Okay, and it is commendable to meditate on these names when saying this prayer. Meaning that right after you say Ana V'choach L'Ati Mincha Tzura, have in mind the name which is written right afterwards, which is the Rashi Tevot of Ana V'choach, right? Okay. Since the world was created through the power of these names, one should stand up after reciting this prayer and recite Baruch She'amar. Okay, blessed is you, the one who created the world. Alternatively, one should stand while reciting both prayers. This is my personal practice. That's what the author recited, right? So incredible. That means he actually stood up for the Seder Yom, right? So he would do it right before Baruch She'amar, and he would do it standing up. Standing up. Yeah, standing up. Just like right before Baruch She'amar. And then he would continue with Baruch She'amar. What is the justification of reciting the prayer immediately after the passage of Abaye? It could be that it based on the fact of Abaye's list omits the blessing that the Kohanim set up on the people, right, each day invoking the name of Hashem. Some Torah scholars asserted that the name of the 42-letter names, by reciting this prayer adjacent to Abaye's right list, we allude to the Kohanim's blessing. So therefore, we're hinting to the blessing of the Kohanim. Our custom, based on the Rizal's instructions, is in the Shara Kavanot, is no, that we do it right after Abaye. And the Rishon LeZion, where the great Kabbalist Ephraim Cohen told him that the prayer is imperative during the Shachri prayer and must not be omitted, as long as one will be able to recite it and still recite the Amidah together with congregation. Meaning, mamash, you have to say it. Meaning the Ana V'choach is very, very powerful. Okay? But how do you say the Ana V'choach? The Shara Kavanot says that according to the Yizel HaKadosh, it's going to be said in a pleasant tune. He followed with the verse Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto. Furthermore, he inserted us to divide this prayer into 2 sets of 2 words and to recite each pair together. Meaning Ana V'choach, comma, Gedulati Minecha, comma, Tatitzurah, right? And you continue going. This is important according to the Kabbalah. Ben Ishchai repeated these instructions as well. Rabbi Mezuz, he cited the prayer book of Ahole Yaakov, instructing us to ignore these instructions in favor of reciting the words in full phrases. Therefore, he ruled that the proper manner of reciting it is Ana V'choach Gedulati Minecha Tatitzurah. Right? If we would recite it as a result instructed, the phrases would be unintelligible. Rabbi Mezuz also cited a similar ruling regarding with Hashem Oshia Melech Yadim Kulenu. The Kabbalists would have asked pause after the word HaMelech. Hashem Oshia Melech Yadim Kulenu. But the Maram Di Lunzano wrote that if we would do this, the verse would lose its meaning. And it would seem as if we were asking Hashem to save the king. Hashem Oshia Hu HaMelech Yadim Kulenu. You understand? Meaning, if you're going to pause in that place, it's going to completely change the meaning. So therefore, he says, the king will answer us on the day when we call out. So the mean is a prayer book, the Yiushmael, the prayer of Ana V'choach says, Ana, please. Yeah. He says, okay.
You're not supposed to.
1 minute. So he says, Ana, V'choach Gedulati Minecha, Tatid Tzurah, Kaber Yinat Mechasa Gavenu, Ta'arenu Nurah. So he says this punctuation appears to be self-contradictory. Nevertheless, Rabbi Yosef agreed with the ruling of the Maram Di Lunzano. So after seeing, that means you're supposed to do it that way. Hashem Oshia, comma, you're supposed to do it that way. So he says, right? He says after seeing that the Shara Kavanot and Ben Ishchai and the Kabbalah all agreed to pronounce the words of the prayers in pairs, it is difficult to see how Rabbi Mezuz saw it correct to overrule them. And Rabbi Yosef Chaim Mizrahi wrote an essay published in Kovesh Shoshanim refuting Rabbi. So basically, it comes out as a machloket how you want to do it, whether you're going to do it that way or not. It's actually a big, huge machloket. Yeah, there's a whole thing about the Mekubalim and not. Okay, fine. You get into machloket. Fine. 58. He says over here like this: the Tzion la nefesh chaya rule that our sages instructed, right, not to recite the pasuk of Baruch Shekel Odomed out loud applies only to this verse when it's in Shema. And this is because we must not demonstrate that we are interpreting, right? We are interrupting the psukim as by Moshe Rabbeinu. But when we're just saying it by itself, we could do it aloud. But the Torah Lishma likewise ruled that it must be recited silently during the Shema, but all other times you can say it aloud. The Rishon LeZion pointed out that the Od Yosef Chai, he comes and he says that specifically that when you're sitting on Choach, you should say the pasuk silently. One may recite it aloud when we're discussing it in one's studies, but not when you're declaring it as a praise. Therefore, the Rishon LeZion recommended reciting it silently in the prayer of Ana V'Choach. Meaning, when you're doing Baruch Shekel Odomed, why do you have to say B'Sheket? Because you have a problem. The Gemara says, should we say it or not say it? Yaakov Avinu, he did say it. Because remember, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad was said by the Shvatim. Shema Yisrael. Who's Israel? Yaakov Avinu. So Shema Yisrael, listen our father Israel, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. When he suspected the tribes of not having the same God, this is right before he died, they went and said, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Echad. Then he answered, Baruch Shekel Odomed. So the Gemara asks, should we say it? Yaakov Avinu said it. But Moshe Rabbeinu in the Varim, he didn't say it. So should we say it or not say it? Says the Gemara, we say it, but we say it quietly. Yeah? Because Moshe Rabbeinu said it in Parashat Vayetchanan. Right? So therefore, we do say it. Right? We say Shema. We say V'avta. We don't say Baruch Shekel Odomed. So why didn't Moshe Rabbeinu say it? So says the Gemara, we do say it, but we say it quietly. She says, but if it's not Shema, you could say it aloud. That is the Shita of the Torah Lishma. That's it. But Rav Vadia wanted to say, no, the really bad man, if it's used as a praise, better to say quietly. Right? Because that was the Malachim, say quietly. But if it's just going to be stam and you're learning, you could just say now, Baruch Shalom, there's no problem. But if you could, yeah. So he says, right? He says, therefore, Maran you should say it quietly, okay? And then he comes and he says, and therefore you should just say quietly. And that's what he's actually bringing down here. It's good to be careful to say quietly. 64. After reciting the passage of Korban Tamid and Ketoret, right? We say Ezu Mekuman and the Baraita of Yiushmael. In this way, we ensure that we have sampled some study of Mishnah and Gemara each day. The Baraita of Rabbi Yiushmael is considered a part of the Gemara. It's found in Yomah, Lamed Gimel Amud Aleph, right? At the end of the Baraita, right? Of the proper version is Vechan Shnei Ketuvim, not Vechen Shnei Ketuvim. He says Vechan Shnei Ketuvim. Okay, so let's see here. Why is Ezu Mekuman? So he says over here. He says like this, that Rabbi Turim explained that this chapter was particular and was chosen for the purpose based on the very pasuk, Uchol makom muktar mugash lishmi. In every location are offered sacrifices for me. Of course, Jews do not offer sacrifices over the world. Instead, the sages explain that this refers to Torah, the Chachamim, that they're learning Torah all over the world, and they're bringing sacrifices. So Maran also added another reason in the Bet Yosef, citing the Rabbi Aaron and Levi, the Ra. This chapter was chosen since there's no halachic disputes mentioned throughout the chapter. It is clear halacha as Moshe Rabbeinu received, meaning there's no machlokot. So there's no machlokot. We're going to mention it. So he says the chapter of Oziel Mekoman has other special attributes. Tells Yom to deduce from this terminology used in the Mishnah that this chapter was composed more than 3,000 years ago, before the construction of the first Beit HaMikdash. Thus, the words have been sanctified by its very antiquity. Why to be Yiushmael Omen? So he says that Rabbi Turim explained that this writer is fitting a conclusion to the Korbanot section of the Shachrit, since it is introductory passage of Torah Kohanim. The collection of the Baraita teaching about the halachot of the Korbanot. You have to understand what you're saying, though. The Magen Avraham, we're almost done. He said, Magen Avraham pointed out that the chapter of Ezu Mekuman and the Baraita of Yiushmael can be counted as Torah study only if the person saying it understands them. Right? What he's saying. If he does not understand it, he accomplishes nothing by saying them. This is not like a prayer where it is acceptable to Hashem even if you don't understand it. He says it's learning. And if you don't understand what you're learning, what does help? This is particularly important for working people and those who need passages to count as they're learning Mishnah of Gemara. That Rishon LeZion ruled based upon this Magen Avraham, it's not possible to simply just read a Mishnah, right, and make assume, right, just on Erev Pesach, or reading a Mishnah without understanding is nothing, is not learning. So completing a Masechet, right, does not, you don't make a celebration, you don't make assume for that. Nevertheless, Rav Chida ruled that it's sufficient if the person just understands the simple translation of the words, even if he doesn't understand the full context. That means as long as you understand the words, it's already enough. You don't have to explain the words. I understand the words. Right? That Rishon LeZion commented that it's sufficient only if the person is incapable of studying Mishnah on a deeper level. If he does, but he doesn't do it, so therefore he's going to be guilty of solemnly approaching and serving as God. See Elkut Yosef in English. Have a wonderful day.